17 years after I found an 8-year-old girl standing outside a Walmart with 5 dying flowers in her hands, her biological mother appeared at her college graduation beside a silver Ferrari. The woman held out the keys and smiled for the cameras. "You have finally proven that you are worthy of coming home." My daughter accepted the keys. Then she turned and looked directly at me. I wish I could tell you that I understood the expression on her face. I did not. I stood near the rear of the University of Cincinnati's engineering pavilion wearing an old Navy suit that no longer fit properly. The shoulders sagged. The pants hung loosely around my waist because I had lost 12 pounds since retirement. My right knee throbbed from the long walk across campus. The polished dress shoes I had not worn in years were crushing my toes. Inside my jacket pocket was a white envelope containing $300. It was Emily's graduation gift. The most I could afford without touching the money reserved for my property taxes. Until I saw the Ferrari, I had been proud of that envelope. Then, for one terrible second, I felt ashamed. The car outside was low, silver, and polished so perfectly that the afternoon sun reflected from the hood like water. A thin red ribbon stretched across it. Students, professors, and parents were already holding up their phones. Beside the car stood Victoria Langford. Even people who never followed business news recognized that name. Langford Medical Systems supplied equipment to hospitals throughout Ohio and half the country. Its name appeared above research laboratories, medical wings, and charitable foundations. Victoria possessed the calm, expensive appearance of someone accustomed to entering rooms that immediately rearranged themselves around her. Cream-colored suit. Perfect posture. A quiet voice that never needed to become loud because money had spent decades speaking before she arrived. She held out a leather key case. Emily took it. My fingers tightened around the little envelope in my pocket. $300. A handwritten note. A father wearing a suit from his retirement dinner. Standing beside a woman offering a $250,000 car. That was where our story eventually led. But it began 17 years earlier on a freezing November night outside a Walmart in Dayton. My name is Thomas Walker. I was 46 years old when I first met Emily. At the time, I worked for the United States Postal Service. I delivered mail 6 days a week through summer heat, freezing rain, barking dogs, broken sidewalks, and the strange belief people have that the mail carrier is somehow responsible for whatever arrives inside an envelope. My wife had died several years earlier. We never had children. After her death, my life became small and predictable. Work. Dinner. Television. Sleep. Repeat. I did not believe anything important was waiting for me. Then one evening, a younger carrier called in sick. I completed my own route and covered part of his. By the time I clocked out, it was nearly 8. Freezing rain clicked against the windshield of my Ford truck. I was tired, hungry, and sore. I stopped at the Walmart on Wilmington Pike for coffee, pain reliever, and a frozen dinner. That ordinary stop changed the rest of my life. She stood near the cart returned beneath a weak yellow parking lot light. A small girl wearing a gray sweatshirt far too thin for November. The sleeves covered half her hands. Her wet hair clung to her cheeks. She held 5 flowers wrapped in damp newspaper. They were not flowers from a store. They looked as though she had pulled them from an abandoned yard. Bent stems. Torn leaves. Pink petals browning around the edges. A man pushed a shopping cart toward his car. The girl stepped toward him. "Would you like to buy a flower, sir?" Her voice was polite but faint. $1. The man continued walking without looking at her. She did not complain. She did not call after him. She simply returned to the sidewalk and waited. 2 more people ignored her. Then I climbed from my truck. "Do you have a business license for this flower operation?" Her eyes widened. Every muscle in her body tightened as though she were preparing to run. I raised both hands. "Easy. I'm joking." She studied me with the caution of someone who had learned that adults often hid danger behind friendly voices. "Do you want one?" she asked. "How much for all 5? $5. I gave her 10. She counted the flowers twice. Then she held them toward me. "I don't have change." "Keep it." Her face hardened. "I'm not begging." "I didn't say you were." You gave me too much. Then consider it a wholesale purchase. The corner of her mouth moved slightly. Almost a smile. Up close, I could see how cold she was. Her lips had lost their color. Water dripped from her hair onto the sweatshirt. Her shoes were wet. When did you last eat? I ate. What did you eat? She glanced toward the parking lot. Food. That certainly answers everything. There was a McDonald's inside the store in those days. I told her I was buying coffee and asked whether she wanted something warm. No. You look cold. I'm fine. You said that already. She refused again. On the third attempt, I said she could use the money from the flowers to purchase her own meal. That mattered. She did not want charity. She wanted control over the exchange. She followed me inside, remaining several steps behind. She ordered 6 chicken nuggets, small fries, and hot chocolate. When the food arrived, she ate slowly. Carefully. As though eating too quickly might cause someone to take it away. Halfway through the meal, she wrapped 2 nuggets inside a napkin and slipped them into her sweatshirt pocket. You saving those? For tomorrow. That was the moment something shifted inside my chest. A child should not plan tomorrow's hunger while sitting in front of food tonight. What is your name? She hesitated. Emily. I'm Thomas. She nodded but offered no last name. How old are you? 9. She was not 9. I learned later that she had recently turned 8. Where are your parents? Her shoulders stiffened. I'm fine. An 8-year-old selling dying flowers outside a Walmart in freezing rain was not fine. I stepped away from the table and called the police. I believed I was speaking quietly. Apparently, I was not quiet enough. When I turned back, the chair was empty. The automatic doors were sliding closed. Emily. I ran after her. My knee hurt even then. She crossed 2 rows of parked cars before her foot slipped on the wet pavement. She hit one knee, scrambled upright, and continued moving. Stay away from me. I stopped 15 feet behind her. Rainwater ran down my forehead and into my eyes. I'm not going to grab you. You called them. Yes. I'm not going back. Back where? She wrapped both arms around herself. She said nothing. I'm not taking you anywhere, I told her. But I am not leaving you outside in this weather. 2 patrol cars arrived 10 minutes later. A county social worker came nearly an hour after that. Her name was Margaret Sloan. She wore a brown coat and the exhausted expression of someone who had spent too many years discovering how often children paid for the failures of adults. Margaret knelt beside Emily and spoke quietly. Emily refused to answer. Eventually, Margaret pulled me aside. She ran from a foster placement yesterday. Why? We're investigating. She said she isn't going back. Margaret looked toward the patrol car. There was an older boy inside the home. He had been taking her food and threatening her. The foster parents did not recognize what was happening soon enough. Where is her family? Her mother left her with an acquaintance several years ago. That arrangement collapsed. We have not been able to locate the mother. I looked at Emily through the car window. She still held the paper bag containing the 2 nuggets she had saved. What happens now? Emergency placement tonight. Paperwork tomorrow. I did not take Emily home that night. Real life is not a movie. You do not find a frightened child in a parking lot and simply decide that she belongs to you. There are rules. Investigations. Background checks. Home inspections. Training. Court hearings. And there should be. Children who have already been failed deserve more than an adult's good intentions. But the following morning, I called Margaret Sloan. 3 days later, I called again. When Emily moved to another temporary home, I asked whether I could visit. Margaret initially refused. Then she explained what would be required for a single widower with no children to become a licensed foster parent. Interviews that felt like interrogations. Financial reviews. Health records. Fingerprinting. References. Training sessions about trauma, attachment, discipline, and the limits of love. I signed up. Not because I believed I could save Emily. I had already learned that people who enter a child's life believing they are heroes often become another disappointment. I signed up because when I closed my eyes, I kept seeing 2 chicken nuggets wrapped inside a napkin for tomorrow. 7 months later, Emily crossed the threshold of my small house in Belmont. Everything she owned was inside a black trash bag. She stood in the living room and looked around. Second-hand couch. Old television. Framed photograph of my late wife on the mantel. A narrow hallway leading toward the bedroom I had prepared. How long am I staying? As long as they allow. She did not like that answer. I did not like giving it. But trust does not begin with promises you do not yet have the power to keep. During the first weeks, she hid crackers beneath the mattress. She slept with her shoes beside the bed. Every morning, she packed her few belongings before leaving for school because she expected someone to tell her she was being moved again. On Sunday nights, she asked whether she would still be there the following week. I always gave the same answer. As far as I know, yes. She wanted forever. I had only today to offer. So I tried to make each today dependable. One evening, she knocked a drinking glass from the kitchen counter. It shattered across the tile. Emily froze. Her hands became stiff at her sides. The color disappeared from her face. She looked toward me like a person watching a storm approach across an open field. I reached for the broom. "It's a glass, kiddo. We have more." She stared at me. "That's it? What else should there be?" Her chin began trembling. Then she lowered herself onto the kitchen floor and cried so hard she could barely breathe. I did not touch her immediately. Children who have been frightened by adults do not always experience touch as comfort. I sat several feet away. I told her she was safe. I told her nobody was sending her away because a glass broke. I told her the only consequence was that we had to clean the floor before one of us cut a foot. She cried until there was nothing left. Then she helped me sweep. Nearly 2 years later, a judge finalized the adoption. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. There were no dramatic speeches. A clerk checked documents. The judge asked questions. I promised to accept the responsibilities of parenthood. Emily sat beside me wearing a blue dress and shoes she hated. Outside the courtroom, she held my hand. "Does this mean they cannot send me somewhere else?" "Not unless you plan to place me inside a nursing home someday." She laughed. Then, for the first time, she called me Dad. One word. Quietly spoken inside a courthouse hallway. It became the greatest title I had ever received. For years, I believed Emily's biological mother had vanished without knowing what became of her. I was wrong. Victoria Langford knew where Emily lived. She knew where Emily attended school. She knew when I worked weekends. She knew when dental bills caused financial strain. She knew about the overtime. The braces. The medical appointments. For 17 years, that woman watched from a distance. She never once came to our door. The first year Emily lived with me, she trusted only things small enough to fit inside a backpack. Food. Clothes. School supplies. Even relationships. Especially relationships. I thought the adoption decree might make the fear disappear. It did not. A judge could change her surname in one afternoon. He could not erase years of being moved from home to home. So I stopped making large promises. I simply continued showing up. Every morning. Every school meeting. Every doctor's appointment. Every night she woke after a nightmare and stood silently inside my doorway. I showed up until she slowly stopped checking whether I would. When Emily was 10, I purchased a used Schwinn bicycle at a garage sale on Patterson Road. It cost $12. Under several layers of damaged paint, it was probably purple. The front brake barely functioned. Emily stood beside it in our driveway with both hands on her hips. "You paid money for that?" $12. "You were robbed." "I consider it an investment." "In tetanus?" I laughed. "Get the sandpaper." We spent 2 Saturdays dismantling it. We removed rust. Replaced cables. Painted the frame blue. The first time she rode without training wheels, she reached the middle of the block before crashing into Mrs. Callahan's hedge. I hurried forward. "Do not touch it," she snapped. I was going to help. I can do it. She pulled the bicycle upright. Blood ran down one chin. She climbed back on. That was Emily. She would eventually accept a bandage. But first, she needed to prove she could survive the wound herself. At 14, she was suspended for punching a boy in the cafeteria. The assistant principal called me at work. When I arrived, Emily sat in the office with her arms folded. A red mark covered one knuckle. The boy had discovered she was adopted and called her a charity case in front of other students. Part of me wanted to congratulate her aim. Instead, I sat across from her. "You will apologize." Her head snapped toward me. He started. He used words. "You used your fist. So I let people say anything they want? No. You walk away. You report it. You answer with better words. But you do not get to hurt someone because he located the part of you that hurts." Emily refused to speak during the drive home. I stopped at Bob Evans. She stared at the sign. I thought I was grounded. "You are. Grounded people still require lunch." Over apple pie, I told her something I hoped she would remember. You never have to feel ashamed of where you began. But you cannot use it as permission to become cruel. She pushed her fork through the crust. "I hate when you sound reasonable." Most teenagers do. She apologized the following morning. She did not mean every word. But she said them. Sometimes character begins before the feeling catches up. By high school, Emily had become the kind of student teachers remembered. Not because she spoke the most. Because she remained after class and asked how things worked. She loved mathematics. I did not. When she began algebra, I spent 3 evenings at the kitchen table relearning equations. I watched instructional videos. Filled half a legal pad with notes. And still solved one problem incorrectly. Emily leaned over my shoulder. "You changed the sign." "I was testing you." "You wrote, 'I hate variables,' in the margin." "That was part of the test." She laughed so hard that milk came through her nose. Those are the years I remember most. Not only birthdays and report cards. Tuesday nights at the kitchen table. Burned grilled cheese sandwiches. Arguments over curfew. Laundry left on the stairs. Ordinary things. That is how a home is built. Not through one grand act. Piece by piece when nobody is watching. When Emily received her acceptance to the University of Cincinnati's biomedical engineering program, she ran into the kitchen holding the letter. I got in. I looked up from the mail. "You sure?" She struck my chest with the envelope. "Read it." The scholarship covered tuition. It did not cover everything. Housing. Meal plans. Books. Insurance. Laboratory fees. Transportation. A dozen charges universities somehow forget to mention inside the brochures. "We will manage," I told her. "Do not do anything stupid." So naturally, I sold my fishing boat. It was not much. A 19-foot aluminum boat with a faded green stripe and an outboard motor that required prayer on cold mornings. My late wife and I used to take it to Indian Lake before she became sick. After her death, I kept it beneath a blue tarp beside the house. I only used it twice each year. But seeing it there made me feel as though part of my old life remained nearby. A man from Springfield paid $4,800. I stood in the driveway while he attached it to his truck. When he drove away, the tires left 2 pale tracks through the grass. Emily came home that weekend. She noticed immediately. "Where is the boat?" "I sold it." Her expression changed. "Why?" "It was sitting there." "Dad?" "The motor was failing." "Dad?" I sighed. "You needed the housing deposit." She dropped her backpack. "I told you not to do that. It was my boat. It belonged to your wife, too." That stopped me. Emily had never met my wife, but she knew every story. "I know. You do not need to keep surrendering parts of your life for me." "I am not surrendering my life. That is what it looks like." I took a breath. "You are not taking anything from me. I am choosing where to place it." Emily looked away. She wiped one cheek with the heel of her hand. "One day, I am buying you another boat. I will settle for you paying the telephone bill on time." She threw a dish towel at me. College changed both of us. Emily became independent. That was exactly what I wanted. It was also more difficult than I expected. She stopped calling every night. She made important decisions without asking me. Sometimes I learned about events after they happened. At the same time, my body began reminding me that I was no longer 46. My right knee had been damaged for years. Then my lower back joined the complaint. 2 fingers on my left hand became numb after long drives. I misplaced my glasses. Forgot whether I had taken my blood pressure medication. Walked into the garage and could not remember why. Nothing serious, I told myself. Only age. I retired earlier than planned after slipping on an icy porch during my route. The fall did not break a bone. It simply completed the damage created by years of stairs, heavy mailbags, and bad weather. I did not tell Emily how much pain I felt. She was working on her senior project. A mobility device designed to help older patients regain balance after surgery. The irony was not lost on me. One evening, she called while I heated canned soup. "Did you take your medication?" "Yes." "Which one?" "The pill-shaped one." "Dad?" "I took it." Silence. "You sound tired." "I'm retired." Tired is part of the position. She did not laugh. "You would tell me if something was wrong?" "Of course." The answer arrived too quickly. We both knew it. On graduation morning, I convinced myself I was fine. I left Dayton at 5:30 inside my 2005 Ford F-150. I wore the same navy suit I had worn to my retirement dinner. Inside the glove compartment was a white envelope. $300 and a handwritten note. "For whatever comes next." I parked farther from the engineering building than I should have. During the walk, whenever my knee forced me to stop, I pretended to admire the campus. When Emily crossed the stage, I stood before anyone else in my row. "That is my daughter," I told the woman beside me. She smiled. "I can tell." After the ceremony, graduates and families entered the engineering pavilion. A faculty member announced that an important donor would present a special award to Emily for her senior project. Then Victoria Langford entered. She walked beside 2 assistants and a university dean. 2 black sport utility vehicles waited outside. I knew Victoria's name from television advertisements and hospital buildings. She stepped to the microphone. She praised Emily's intelligence, her discipline, her research, her determination to improve the lives of patients. Then her voice changed. "There is another reason this young woman is important to me." Emily went completely still. Victoria turned toward her. "I am Emily's biological mother." Nobody applauded. For several seconds, only the air conditioning system could be heard. I looked toward Emily. I expected shock. She was not shocked. That frightened me more than the announcement. One of Victoria's assistants carried forward a red leather box. Inside was the key to the Ferrari waiting beyond the glass wall. Victoria smiled. "You have spent years showing the world what kind of woman you are. You have proven yourself. You have proven that you are worthy of coming home." Emily accepted the key. My hand moved into my jacket pocket. My fingers closed around the envelope. Then Victoria handed Emily a cream-colored folder. "There is only one small formality before we leave." Victoria held the folder with both hands as though she were presenting a diploma rather than legal paperwork. "This is simply intended to protect everyone's privacy. Nothing complicated." A man standing behind her opened a pen and held it toward Emily. That gesture bothered me more than it should have. They had brought the pen. They had marked the pages. They had expected her signature. Emily accepted the folder. She did not accept the pen. "What am I signing?" Victoria gave her a patient smile. "A family reconciliation agreement. It allows us to move forward without interference." "What kind of interference?" "Media. Lawyers. People who may attempt to exploit the situation." The way she said people made it sound as though she had already divided the room into 2 categories. Useful. Inconvenient. Victoria turned toward the guests. "Emily will receive every opportunity she should have had from the beginning." Then she listed them. An apartment in Chicago near the Langford Medical Systems headquarters. A role with the family foundation. Access to the Langford estate in Lake Forest. A transition fund for clothing, travel, security, transportation, and anything else Emily might need while adjusting to her new life. New life. Those two words struck harder than everything else. I looked around. White tablecloths. Trays of untouched sandwiches. Parents whispering. Students holding plastic cups of lemonade. Outside, the silver Ferrari waited like a polished promise. Emily opened the folder. Victoria continued speaking. There is no pressure to change your surname. That would be entirely your choice. However, if you decide to reconnect publicly with the Langford family, we will fully support you. My hand remained around the envelope. $300. For whatever comes next. At that moment, the gift felt almost insulting. I looked down at my shoes. I had polished them the night before. The leather was cracked near the toes. One of Victoria's assistants wore shoes that probably cost more than my monthly pension. I hated myself for noticing. I hated the thought that followed even more. Perhaps this was what Emily deserved. Not my old Ford with an unreliable heater. Not my one-story house with a loose gutter and a bathroom door that never closed correctly. Not a father who kept a reminder list on the refrigerator because his memory had become less dependable. Perhaps loving Emily meant stepping aside when somebody else could offer more. Another part of me wanted her to throw the key through the glass wall. I wanted her to call Victoria a coward. I wanted her to point toward me and declare that none of the money mattered. But that was my hurt speaking. The father inside me understood something harder. If Emily wanted that life, I had to allow her to choose it without making her feel guilty for leaving me behind. I loosened my grip on the envelope. Emily turned one page. Then another. You have read this? Victoria nodded. Of course. Every section? My legal team prepared it. That was not my question. The pavilion became quieter. Victoria's smile narrowed. Yes. I reviewed it. Emily pointed toward one paragraph. This says I acknowledge that you made reasonable efforts to locate and support me during childhood. That is standard language. Is it true? Victoria's expression remained controlled. We never stopped caring about you. That is not what I asked. Victoria glanced toward the dean. Then toward one of her attorneys. There were circumstances you do not understand. Then explain them. Several people lowered their phones. The moment no longer felt like a generous family reunion. It felt like testimony. Victoria folded her hands. I was young. I was under tremendous pressure from Daniel's family. They believed you were not his child. There were threats involving money, custody, and my personal safety. I made the choice I believed gave you the best chance at stability. Emily remained calm. How long have you known where I lived? Victoria hesitated. I always hoped you were safe. How long? I received occasional updates. Emily nodded. Was that before or after my 11th birthday? The question was too specific to be spontaneous. Victoria's eyes moved toward her attorney. That was when I realized Emily had entered the room carrying information I did not possess. She reached inside her graduation gown and removed a folded document. What is that? Victoria asked. Emily opened it. A report from Wickham Investigations. Dated March 14, 2012. The color disappeared from Victoria's face. Emily began reading. Subject resides with adoptive father Thomas Walker in Dayton, Ohio. Attends Horace Mann Elementary School. No immediate safety concerns. Hearing my name inside the report made my stomach turn. Emily continued. Mr. Walker has recently accepted additional weekend shifts. Dental treatment for the child may be producing financial strain. I remembered that year. Emily needed braces. The insurance covered far less than expected. I delivered Sunday parcels for nearly 4 months. I told her I wanted the work because retirement bored me. Somebody had watched us. Somebody had documented it. Victoria cleared her throat. I hired professionals because I needed to know you were safe. You knew I needed dental care, Emily said. That does not mean I understood every detail. You knew Dad was working additional shifts. I was advised not to interfere. By whom? My attorneys. Emily's voice remained level. Did they advise you not to send a birthday card? Nobody moved. I wanted to step forward. Something stopped me. This question belonged to Emily. She had earned the right to ask it herself. Victoria lowered her voice. I know this appears terrible. It does not appear terrible, Emily said. It is terrible. A university employee began moving toward the microphone, probably hoping to end the scene before it damaged the institution's reputation. Emily raised one hand. I am almost finished. Then she turned toward the audience. 3 weeks ago, an attorney named Claire Reynolds contacted me. A woman in the third row stood. Dark blue suit. Plain leather folder. No assistants. No security. Victoria stared at her. You had no authority to contact Emily before the estate review was completed. Claire's expression did not change. I represent the independent trustee. We were legally required to notify her. Emily looked toward me. I must have appeared completely lost because her face softened. Then she explained. Victoria's husband, Daniel Langford, had died 8 months earlier. His trust included every legally verified biological child. During the review of the estate, old documents led the trustee to Emily. A DNA comparison involving Daniel's brother confirmed the truth. Emily was Daniel Langford's biological daughter. She was legally entitled to a substantial share of the family trust, whether Victoria approved or not. Claire spoke from the third row. Emily does not need to live with Mrs. Langford. Victoria's attorney stepped forward. This is not the place for legal interpretation. Claire ignored him. She does not need to change her name. She does not need to work for the foundation. And she does not need to surrender her right to speak honestly about her childhood. The cream-colored folder suddenly appeared different. It was not an invitation home. It was a leash covered in expensive paper. I looked at Emily. You knew? She nodded. For 3 weeks. Why did you not tell me? Her eyes met mine. Because I needed to know why she was returning. The answer hurt. Not because Emily had done anything wrong. Because she had carried the burden alone. Victoria stepped closer. Emily, we should discuss this privately. You are being overwhelmed by people with their own agendas. Emily opened her hand. The Ferrari key rested in her palm. She looked at it. Then she closed her fingers. Thank you. I will accept the car. Victoria's shoulders relaxed. Her smile returned. Mine must have disappeared. Then Emily turned toward Claire. Now I would like my attorney to explain what Mrs. Langford expected in return. Claire Reynolds approached the front without hurrying. That was the first thing I noticed. Everyone else looked unsettled. Victoria's lawyer whispered urgently to an assistant. The dean stood with his hands clasped, trying to determine whether this was a legal crisis or a public relations disaster. Claire remained calm. She stopped beside Emily. For the record, I represent the independent trustee overseeing Daniel Langford's estate. I do not represent Victoria Langford. I do not represent Langford Medical Systems. And I do not represent the university. Victoria's attorney stepped forward. This is a private family issue. Claire looked at him. Then it probably should not have been announced before 200 people. Nervous laughter moved through the room. Even Emily looked down to hide a smile. Claire opened her folder. Emily Walker has been legally verified as Daniel Langford's biological daughter. She is a beneficiary under his trust. That status is not dependent upon her residence, her surname, her employment, her participation in the Langford Foundation, or the existence of a personal relationship with Mrs. Langford. Victoria raised her chin. No one suggested otherwise. Claire turned a page. The agreement presented to Emily suggests otherwise in several sections. That is a gross misrepresentation, Victoria's attorney said. Then you should have no objection to my explaining it. He opened his mouth. Victoria lifted a hand. Let her speak. Her voice remained controlled. But I could see the pulse beating quickly at the base of her throat. Claire lifted the cream-colored folder. This document requires Emily to acknowledge that Mrs. Langford made reasonable attempts to locate and support me during childhood. Emily looked at Victoria. You did not. Victoria's mouth tightened. Claire continued. It prohibits Emily from publicly discussing the circumstances of her abandonment. The private investigation reports her experience inside foster care and any financial hardship she experienced after entering Mr. Walker's home. A murmur moved through the pavilion. It also contains a broad release of potential legal claims, including claims Emily may not yet know she possesses. And it gives a communications team selected by the Langford family authority to approve interviews, statements, written accounts, and other public discussion concerning her childhood. The dean rubbed his forehead. Victoria turned toward the audience. This is precisely why private matters should remain private. Legal wording often sounds harsh without context. Emily folded her arms. What context makes a lie true? Emily, please. No. You brought reporters. Victoria glanced toward the local news camera at the rear of the room. They were already attending the university ceremony. You arranged for them to remain for the award. Victoria did not answer. Claire closed the folder. The trustee did not request this agreement. Emily's inheritance is not conditional upon her signing it. The man who had offered the pen quietly returned it to his pocket. Victoria's expression hardened. I was trying to protect her from a media circus. Emily looked around the room. You created one. Another nervous laugh passed through the audience. Victoria's eyes flashed. Then she softened her voice. You only know fragments of the past. I know you left me. I was 29. Daniel's family believed you belonged to someone else. They threatened to cut me off. They threatened to destroy me in court. Then why did you not fight? I was frightened. Emily nodded slowly. I can understand being frightened once. Victoria's expression changed. But you were not frightened for one day. You had 17 years. The room fell silent again. Victoria looked toward me as though she expected assistance. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Instead, I asked the question sitting inside my chest. Did your attorneys advise you not to send her a birthday card? For the first time, Victoria appeared to truly see me. Not as an aging man near the wall. Not as an obstacle between her and Emily. As the person who had been present during the years she had observed from a distance. I was told contact could destabilize her placement. For 17 years? She looked away. I wanted to tell her everything. The night Emily's appendix was removed and she woke asking whether I would still be there in the morning. The Christmas Eve shift I accepted because the orthodontist bill was overdue. The bicycle. The broken glass. The school suspension. The algebra. The boat. Every sacrifice rose inside me like a stack of receipts. Then I looked at Emily beside Claire. This was not my trial. And love was not a debt I needed to collect before an audience. I stepped back. Emily noticed. You keep saying you watched because you cared, she told Victoria. But watching is not parenting. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. She pointed toward me. He did not watch. He showed up. Victoria looked at me again. Emily continued. He sat beside me when I was sick. He relearned algebra because I was too embarrassed to admit I did not understand it. He worked weekends and told me he was bored. He sold the last thing he had kept from his life with his wife so I could pay a college housing deposit. My throat tightened. Emily. She shook her head. He never told me I had to become successful to make those sacrifices worthwhile. Then she faced Victoria. You did not return because I finally became your daughter. You returned because a DNA test made me valuable to your family. Victoria's eyes filled. Her voice remained sharp. That is not fair. Emily looked directly at her. No. It is not. Emily opened her hand. The Ferrari key rested against her palm. For a moment, I believed she would return it. Instead, she lifted it. You said this car was mine without conditions. Victoria hesitated. Yes. Good. I intend to hold you to that. Confusion crossed Victoria's face. Emily looked toward Claire. Can ownership be transferred directly to the Miami Valley Foster Youth Alliance? Claire nodded. Once the title is completed, yes. Victoria stepped forward. What are you talking about? They will auction it. The money can fund emergency housing, laptops, transportation, college deposits, and basic support for young people aging out of foster care. Victoria stared at her. You would give away a $250,000 car to humiliate me? Emily's expression did not change. This is not about humiliating you. She looked at the key one final time. It is for children whose parents know exactly where they are and still do not come. Nobody applauded at first. That made the moment feel real. The room simply held the words. Then an older woman near the front began clapping. A professor joined her. Several graduates stood. Within seconds, most of the pavilion was on its feet. I barely heard them. I watched Victoria. Her polished expression finally broke. You are destroying our only opportunity to become a family. Emily placed the unsigned agreement on the podium. No. I am refusing to let you pretend we already were one. Victoria left before the applause ended. Her attorney collected the unsigned document. One assistant followed carrying the empty red box. The other remained long enough to warn Claire that any transfer of the Ferrari would be reviewed carefully. Claire handed him a business card. I am certain it will. Outside, the silver car remained beside the curb with the ribbon stretched across the hood. Students gathered around it but did not touch. Emily and I walked past. She still wore her cap and gown. The white envelope remained inside my pocket. We did not speak until we reached the parking garage. The silence between us was not the familiar silence of long drives and shared understanding. This silence felt crowded. I unlocked the Ford. Emily opened the passenger door. Then she paused. Are you okay? I laughed once without humor. I just discovered that a billionaire paid people to watch us for 17 years. I am still deciding. She climbed inside. I started the engine. The truck made its usual grinding complaint before turning over. For 10 minutes, we drove without speaking. Traffic moved slowly near campus. Graduates leaned from car windows and waved their caps. Families posed for photographs. Horns sounded in celebration. It should have felt joyful. I kept seeing Emily take the key. Finally, I spoke. Why did you not tell me? She looked through the window. I told you. I needed to understand what she wanted. That is not what I asked. Emily turned toward me. What did you expect me to do? Call you 3 weeks ago and say the woman who abandoned me is a billionaire, her husband died, and I might inherit millions? Yes. You would have driven to Cincinnati before I finished the sentence. Probably. You would have tried to solve everything. I am your father. And I am 25. Her voice was not angry yet. It was moving in that direction. You carried this by yourself for 3 weeks. I had Claire. That is not the same. No. It isn't. Claire does not panic. I looked at her. She closed her eyes. That came out wrong. No. It came out honestly. We stopped at a red light. Emily removed her graduation cap and placed it on the floor. I was trying to protect you. I do not need protection from your life. You hide your pain medication from me. That is different. How? Because it is. She gave me an exhausted look. That was when the argument became real. You believe every difficult thing belongs on your shoulders, she said. Even when nobody asks you to carry it. That is what parents do. No. That is what you do. The light turned green. The driver behind us tapped his horn. I drove forward. I watched you accept the key. Emily became quiet. For 1 second, I believed you were leaving with her. Her head turned sharply. You thought I would leave with her? I did not know what to think. After everything? It was not about trusting you. It sounds exactly like that. I breathed out hard. It was about me. Emily waited. I hated the next words before I said them. I am 63. My knee barely carried me across campus. I forget things. Half the time, you remind me to take medication. Then she appeared with a Ferrari. An apartment. Money. Connections. Everything I could never give you. Emily stared at me. I thought you might look at her life and realize you had settled for mine. She did not answer immediately. We passed the river and merged onto Interstate 75. Finally, she spoke. "You are not competing with her." It did not feel that way. She is competing with 17 years she can never recover. I kept my eyes on the highway. And she is losing. Because you were there. The anger left me. What remained was heavier. At a rest area north of Hamilton, I pulled into a parking space. "What are we doing?" Emily asked. "My knee needs 5 minutes." That was not the entire truth. I reached into my jacket. I handed her the white envelope. She frowned. "What is this?" "Your graduation gift." "Dad? Open it." She opened the envelope and removed the check. Then she unfolded the note. "For whatever comes next." Her mouth tightened. $300? I know it is not much. She looked at me as though I had said something ridiculous. This is the first thing anyone gave me today without expecting something in return. I looked away. Emily reached across the console and took my hand. We remained there until my knee hurt less and neither of us needed to say anything else. For approximately 2 days, I believe the most difficult part was behind us. Then the video spread across the internet. A student had recorded Emily's confrontation. By Monday, local television stations carried it. By Wednesday, national websites ran headlines about the foster child who publicly rejected her billionaire mother. Some people praised Emily. Others called her ungrateful. Some accused her of embarrassing Victoria for attention. A few said I had raised her to hate wealthy people. One man wrote that I had poisoned Emily against her real family. I read that sentence more times than I should have. Real family. As though 17 years of mornings, illnesses, homework, rent, fear, and love could be erased by biology and a headline. Victoria released a public statement. She claimed she had attempted a private reconciliation and had been ambushed by people seeking financial gain. Her attorneys challenged Emily's claim to the trust. They could not erase the DNA evidence. But wealthy people often do not need to win immediately. Sometimes they only need enough lawyers to make the truth exhausted. They requested additional testing. Questioned the handling of adoption records. Demanded every communication between Claire and Emily. Raised procedural objections. The Ferrari remained trapped inside legal paperwork. Weeks became months. Emily attended meetings. Provided blood samples. Signed affidavits. Answered the same questions repeatedly. She had planned to begin work at a medical device company in Columbus. She postponed her start date twice. I watched the strain settle into her face. One evening, I found her at my kitchen table surrounded by documents. "You can walk away." She did not look up. That is what she wants. You do not need the money. It is not about needing money. Emily placed down her pen. If I walk away, she gets to decide that making this painful is enough to erase me again. That was when I understood. Emily was not fighting for a fortune. She was fighting for the right not to disappear because somebody powerful found her inconvenient. Victoria began experiencing consequences of her own. An internal review discovered that Langford Medical Systems had paid some of the investigators who tracked Emily. The payments had been categorized as risk management. Victoria temporarily stepped away from daily operations while the board investigated. Her life did not collapse overnight. Reality is rarely that clean. But for the first time, the control upon which she had always depended began slipping away. 6 months after graduation, Claire called while Emily and I ate chili at the kitchen table. We placed her on speaker. "The trustee has approved Emily's claim." "Fully." Emily closed her eyes. I reached for her hand. "There is another matter," Claire said. "Victoria has requested a private meeting before the final documents are executed." "With attorneys?" Emily asked. "No." "Public relations representatives?" "No." Claire paused. "She says she wants to come alone." Emily selected a small diner outside Dayton. Mel's Country Kitchen. It sat beside an old highway where truck drivers still stopped for coffee before sunrise. The booths were worn smooth by decades of elbows, spilled drinks, first dates, business meetings, and conversations that changed lives. Victoria arrived 5 minutes early. I almost did not recognize her. The cream suits were gone. No assistants. No security. No lawyer carrying an agreement. She wore dark jeans, a navy sweater, and a light jacket. She appeared older. Not because of wrinkles. Because she looked tired. She spotted us and approached slowly. "Thank you for meeting me." Emily nodded toward the empty seat. Victoria sat. A waitress poured coffee for the three of us, completely unaware that she was interrupting one of the strangest family meetings in Ohio. For nearly a minute, nobody spoke. Victoria wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. "I have practiced this conversation 100 times. Emily looked at her. "And?" Every version sounded like I was defending myself. Emily remained silent. Victoria looked directly at her. "I spent 17 years telling myself a story." "What story?" "That I abandoned you because I had no choice." She breathed slowly. "There was some truth in it. Daniel's parents hated me after they learned I had been unfaithful. They convinced Daniel you could not be his child. When I left, I promised myself I would return once everything settled. But you did not." "No." "Why?" Victoria closed her eyes. "Because every year made returning harder." Silence settled over the booth. "I received reports about you," Victoria continued. "At first, I only wanted proof that you were alive. I know. Then I learned you had been placed with Thomas. I remained quiet. I told myself you were finally safe." Emily leaned forward. "And that made abandoning me easier." Victoria nodded. "Yes." She did not soften the answer. "That was the lie I repeated until I believed it. When the reports said Thomas was working overtime, when they included photographs from school, when they described your grades and your medical care, I convinced myself that appearing would only confuse you." She looked toward me. "The truth is that I was not protecting Emily. I was protecting myself." The words remained between us. No excuse followed. No attorney's language. No attempt to turn cowardice into sacrifice. "I was terrified," Victoria whispered. "Of what?" Emily asked. "Seeing the damage I had caused." The waitress returned with breakfast. None of us touched it. Victoria looked at Emily. "When Daniel died, my first thought was not about money." Emily did not respond. "It was about secrets. When the trust attorneys began reopening records, I panicked." She laughed bitterly. "My first thought was not that I might finally meet my daughter. My first thought was that the entire country might learn what kind of mother I had been." Emily listened. "So I tried to control everything. The car. The agreement. The press. The story." Victoria looked down. "I did not return because you needed your mother. I returned because I needed control." A tear moved down her cheek. "I am sorry." Nothing else. No but. No blame. No Daniel. No parents. No lawyers. Only 2 words. Emily watched her for several seconds. "I believe you are sorry." Hope appeared in Victoria's eyes. "But believing you are sorry is not the same as pretending none of it happened." The hope faded. Acceptance replaced it. "I know. If we are going to have any relationship, there will be rules." Victoria nodded quickly. "Anything. You do not arrive at Dad's house without asking." "I will not." You do not send expensive gifts expecting them to repair the past. I understand. You do not call him my adoptive father. Victoria looked briefly toward me. Then back at Emily. I will not. And you never tell anybody that you raised me. Victoria's eyes filled again. I will not. If you lie about what happened one more time, even once, we are finished. Victoria did not hesitate. I accept that. The conversation continued for another hour. Not because everything had been repaired. Because for the first time, nobody was trying to win. Victoria asked about Emily's engineering work. Emily answered politely. Victoria asked about my knee. I told her it complained more loudly than I did. She smiled. A small smile. A human one. When we stood to leave, Victoria reached into her purse. My shoulders tightened. She noticed. It is not a gift. She placed a folded paper on the table. Her personal telephone number. No assistant. No lawyer. If either of you ever wants to speak, call me directly. Emily picked it up. She did not promise to call. Neither did I. Sometimes forgiveness does not look like an embrace. Sometimes it looks like leaving one door unlocked. 1 month later, the trustee finalized everything. Emily received what the law said belonged to her. She did not move into the Langford estate. She did not join the family company. She began working as an engineer. The Ferrari was transferred, auctioned, and converted into emergency housing, college deposits, laptops, transportation grants, and other assistance for young adults leaving foster care. Emily paid the remaining mortgage on my house. I argued for 3 days. I do not need you paying my bills. She smiled. You did not raise me so I would owe you. Exactly. You raised me so I would understand how to care for people. I could not find a better argument. The following spring, nearly 1 year after graduation, Emily drove me to Indian Lake. A used aluminum fishing boat waited beside the dock. It was not extravagant. Not expensive. Just the right size. She tossed me the keys. You kept your promise, I said. No. She laughed. You kept yours. We spent the afternoon catching almost nothing. It was perfect. Before leaving, Emily asked me to take one photograph. Not beside the boat. Not beside the lake. Beside my old 2005 Ford F-150. She slipped one arm through mine. Smile, Dad. I did. That photograph still sits above my fireplace. People sometimes ask why there is no picture of the Ferrari. No photograph of the Langford estate. No framed newspaper from the day Emily inherited enough money to change the rest of her life. The answer is simple. Those things changed her future. The old Ford reminds us who carried her there. Growing older has taught me something I wish I had understood earlier. Most parents do not fear age only because of wrinkles, pain, or retirement. We fear becoming unnecessary. We fear waking one morning and discovering that the people we spent our lives loving have moved beyond us. We fear becoming the old obligation discussed after somebody checks a calendar. Emily taught me something different. When you raise somebody with patience, honesty, and unconditional love, that person may eventually stop needing you to solve every problem. That is not abandonment. That is success. They may build a life beyond anything you could offer. They may become stronger, wealthier, wiser, and more capable than you. But they will never forget where home is. Blood can explain where a child's life begins. It cannot explain who remained. Victoria gave Emily life. I was fortunate enough to share the rest of it. I was there when she hid crackers beneath the mattress. When she broke the glass. When she crashed the bicycle. When she punched the boy. When she struggled with algebra. When she opened the acceptance letter. When she left for college. When she crossed the graduation stage. And when the woman who had watched for 17 years finally appeared with a Ferrari and called it home. Victoria believed Emily needed to prove herself worthy of returning. She was wrong. A child should never need to earn the right to be loved by a parent. The only person who needed to prove herself that day was Victoria. Emily accepted the Ferrari. She did not accept the conditions. She accepted her inheritance. She did not surrender her name. She allowed the possibility of forgiveness. She did not rewrite history to make forgiveness more comfortable. That is the woman she became. Not because of my money. Not because of Victoria's money. Because she learned that love can be compassionate without becoming weak. Truthful without becoming cruel. Forgiving without becoming forgetful. For years, I worried that I could never give Emily enough. A large house. A new car. A perfect childhood. A mother. Money without limits. I could not give her those things. What I could give was consistency. A bedroom that remained hers. Food that would still be inside the refrigerator tomorrow. A father who stayed after the glass shattered. A chair beside the hospital bed. An old truck that always came when she called. $300 in a white envelope with no contract attached. It did not feel extraordinary while I was giving it. Most real love does not. It feels like another Tuesday. Another bill. Another ride. Another meal. Another moment when leaving would be easier and you choose to remain. 17 years after a frightened girl tried to sell me 5 dying flowers, she stood in a university pavilion holding the key to a silver Ferrari. The flowers had lasted only a few days. I placed them in a jar on my kitchen table. Their petals fell. The stems bent. Eventually, I threw them away. But the choice I made that night continued growing. One telephone call. One foster care application. One bedroom. One broken glass met with patience instead of fear. One ordinary act after another. Until the frightened child became a woman strong enough to stand before a billionaire and refuse to sell her truth. People sometimes describe what I did as rescuing Emily. I do not see it that way. I gave her a home. She gave my life a purpose I did not know it lacked. She filled rooms that had become quiet after my wife died. She gave me algebra problems, parent-teacher meetings, curfews, medical forms, and reasons to worry. She gave me the word dad. She gave me a future. Whatever I gave her, she returned in ways no inheritance could measure. The silver Ferrari raised enough money to help dozens of young people. Some received laptops. Some received rent deposits. Others received reliable transportation. One young woman used the support to remain inside college after her foster placement ended. A young man purchased tools for an apprenticeship. The car Victoria intended as a symbol of wealth became a bridge for children who had almost nothing. Emily did not reject the gift. She transformed its purpose. That was more powerful than throwing the key away. Victoria and Emily are not a perfect family now. They may never become one. Some months, they speak. Other months, they do not. Victoria has learned to ask before visiting. She sends no expensive gifts. She does not call herself the woman who raised Emily. She has told the truth publicly about leaving. It did not erase the past. But honesty created a narrow path towards something different. Not restoration. Not yet. Possibility. Emily once asked whether I resented Victoria. I told her the truth. For a while, yes. How about now? Now I mostly feel sad for her. Why? Because she watched the best years of your life from a distance. She saw school photographs. Reports. Numbers. She knew what happened. But she did not know you. Victoria lost 17 years no amount of money can purchase back. That is consequence enough. The boat Emily bought remains at Indian Lake. The motor is unreliable on cold mornings. Apparently she wanted historical accuracy. My knee hurts when I climb into it. Emily complains whenever I refuse assistance. Sometimes we catch fish. Usually, we do not. We sit on the water and talk about work, life, and the future. Occasionally, we say nothing. The silence is easy. The kind of silence built between people who know neither one is leaving. I once believed being a father meant giving a child everything. Age has taught me that no parent can do that. The world is too large. Life asks for too much. There will always be something you cannot afford. Something you cannot prevent. Something you cannot repair. The real responsibility is simpler and harder. Be there. When the child is frightened, be there. When she is angry, be there. When she makes mistakes, be there. When she no longer needs your answers, remain near enough that she can still ask. Do not make love dependent upon achievement. Do not ask for repayment. Do not disappear because remaining has become inconvenient. Victoria told Emily she had proven herself worthy of coming home. Emily already had a home. It was a small house in Belmont. The gutter sagged. The bathroom door stuck. The Ford in the driveway complained every time it started. The refrigerator held reminder notes because her father sometimes forgot things. It was not impressive. It was not wealthy. But nobody inside that house required Emily to prove that she deserved to stay. That is what made it home. The last time we visited Indian Lake, Emily stood beside the truck before we left. She looked at the old photograph on her phone. The one taken after she bought the boat. Her arm through mine. My tired Ford behind us. "You know what I remember about graduation?" she asked. "The Ferrari?" "No." "The argument inside the truck?" "Partly." What, then? The envelope. I smiled. $300 defeated a Ferrari? It was never competing with the Ferrari. She looked at me. The envelope told me that whatever happened next, I still had somewhere to return. That is the greatest gift a parent can provide. Not a car. Not an estate. Not wealth. The certainty that whatever comes next, there is still a place where you are loved without conditions. Blood may determine who brings a child into the world. Love determines who walks beside that child through it. Victoria gave Emily her beginning. I was blessed enough to share the journey. And when my daughter finally looked at me with a Ferrari key in her hand, she was not asking which parent had more to offer. She was showing me that she already knew the difference between wealth and home. The Ferrari was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The envelope held 300. But one arrived with a contract. The other arrived with 4 words. For whatever comes next. And that is why, when everything was over, my daughter came home with me inside the old Ford.